Hey team, welcome to Inside the Movie Photographer with Jasin Boland. Today, I've got a real special treat for you. I've got Jamie. He's a new buddy of mine, and he is the creative director and owner of Absolutely AI, based in Sydney. And you're going to know exactly who I'm talking about in a minute because I'm going to show you a photo. But Jamie has a background in documentary making and photography, so he's the perfect expert to answer a few questions that all us photographers have got regarding AI. So I'm really excited about this. And from the chats that I've been having with him, all my fears have been relieved. So I'm going to bring Jamie in right now. And here we go. Hey, buddy. Good to see you again.
Jason, good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely, man. I've been so looking forward to this. I'm going to cut straight to the chase with this one. I'm going to bring the photo up. And this is how I was introduced to Jamie and probably the rest of the photographic world with this here. And Jamie entered into a competition, a photographic competition, and under a non-de plume, and it won the award. Now, before I go any further, Jamie fessed up and wasn't trying to kid anyone. It turned into quite a sensation that the company that ran this competition did another one called Human versus Machine. So, Jamie, tell us the story.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Well, yeah, so it's been a really interesting time with AI over the past 4, 5, 6 months or so, because we are seeing that it is exponentially getting better and better and better, to the point where it's pretty much realistic. So with this little experiment that I did, I wanted to see if I could win a photography competition, because I saw that as being kind of the ultimate test. Not could I fool an average Joe? Is this a nice photo? Is this a real photo? But someone who's, pretty top in their field, an actual competition. So yeah, I went about it and entered this photo of 2 surfers at sunrise, drone shot over a beach, crashing wave, but it's completely fake. It was generated by AI.
Yeah, it's quite astounding. I mean, I remember when I saw it and it's like, hey, hold on, the swell lines aren't running right, but it is a magnificent image. But you tricked the judges, and I think that was when they did the next competition. They were hoping to probably trick us. I'm not saying that was the goal, but the next one, the judges were from myself, from Nikon, Sony, Canon, Fuji, and was there a Leica? I can't remember. It was really interesting because it was playing on everyone's minds, and we were like, I don't know if this is AI. I don't know if it's photography. You're right. The lines are blurred so much now.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that we're all having to get our heads around that, particularly photographers and particularly filmmakers, that, what is this new thing? Usually or traditionally, you'd have to go out and, for this shot, for example, you'd have to wake up nice and early, take a bus out to the beach or drive out to the beach, get your drone up there, have kind of fantastic conditions, not too windy up there that you could get the drone high enough, surfers in the water, sunrise just right. You'd have to have these conditions right to get an image like this. But for this one, it was completely fake, and I made it on a rainy day in Sydney, just sitting on my couch.
I love it. Hey, what's on the lips of every photographer, or on the minds, is them being replaced. Now, you and I have chatted about this. What can't AI at the present moment, or maybe ever, replace when it comes to photography?
I think there's a few different aspects to this question. I might throw it back at you, Jason. Why did you get into photography? What was it that got you into photography?
Storytelling. I started off as a newspaper photographer, so I wanted to go out there and experience news events and record them.
Yeah. So experiencing news events, that's a very real event that has happened. AI will never be able to compete with that, because it is creating things that have happened in the past. It can't create something that's happening this very second. It's having to draw on a whole heap of photos, different information that you feed it to create an image. that image may look like what you want it to look like, but it's never going to replace the actual real thing. It can't replace someone physically, a wedding. It can't replace whatever kind of photography you are. It can't replace those real moments. That's what I think everyone kind of has to remember.
So what you say, I mean, look, I'm going to start flicking through some of your other images and show everyone as well. So what you're saying basically is that, the way that I feel that AI is a great tool for marketing purposes and recreating something or an idea that comes to your mind. Like stuff like this. See, this is beautiful. And do you mind telling us? You don't have to give us all your secrets or anything like that, but I'd love to know some of the prompts or a broad prompt for some every now and again. If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, I totally get it.
So for something like this, I wanted to create an image book called Unreal Worlds, where I kind of explored worlds that weren't real, completely unreal. New people, aliens, animals, just kind of testing the limitations of how far can this tech go to create entirely new things. So with this one, I was very broad and essentially just told it, create me some new animals on an alien world. I think it was bright colors, beautiful background landscape, that kind of thing. And it came out with these. And it is very good. AI is fantastic. And this comes back to your original point about photographers getting worried about being replaced. AI is fantastic at bringing to life things that aren't real. So if you have an idea about alien worlds, if you have an idea about, how did Egypt look 4,000 years ago, it's great at creating that stuff. Where it does fall down is the very specifics, the very real. So if I wanted the queen riding a dragon in a dress that's bright red, it would struggle to create that because it's super specific. Whereas something like this, create me alien worlds, it has heaps to choose from, heaps to generate, because it's quite a broad thing. That's where kind of AI does well. But when you're talking about news events, weddings, things that actually are happening, it does struggle.
Right. And now, talking of news events, I mean, is that a danger that we're looking at with propaganda and things like that? Images that didn't happen, conflict that didn't happen.
Yeah, so after our experiment, it did make global headlines. It went right around the world. We're getting in touch, German newspapers, UK newspapers, whoever it might be. And one of them, who we had a chat to and explained our experiment, actually noticed something during the earthquake that happened recently in Syria and Turkey, that there was a GoFundMe type page set up, a charity page set up, using images that seemed a little off, and it was generating money. It was a scam. And they were using AI images to scam people, to elicit engagement and emotional response. And the original photo was, a fireman holding a little baby. And the caption was like, donate to Turkey and Syria. Look how awful it is. But this media outlet over in the UK spotted this, noticed it was a bit off, and exposed it for the scam that it was. So I think people are going to abuse this, sadly, going to abuse this technology because what it can create out of essentially nothing is pretty wide-ranging. And yeah, the potential is pretty exciting, and it's pretty terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I find it, I was, it made me anxious in the beginning, in the first couple of months when I was seeing it everywhere. And to the point that I was telling all my friends, don't do AI selfies because it'll steal your soul. But I can definitely see a use for it. Like an example, another thing that you and I talked about with my, with marketing shoots, like having a real actor there and then AI taking over and building on those images. I think that's really, really exciting for marketing products and stuff like that. With what you're doing, it's like, I mean, like that's just crazy beautiful. Now, if you've created this world, right, can you then say punch in on it, right? So you've got this planet here, or this, is it a planet or a rock? Oh God, it's both. It's everything. But can you then go into that? Can you then go into that world and develop characters that live in this world?
Not yet. So it's right now we're at a point where you can ask it for an image, it will give you an image. It's difficult to then build on that image, as in punch into that and then imagine what lives there. It struggles to build on that now. It will be able to in time. And some of the crazy stuff, what is about to be released is text to video. So right now we've got text to image. Text to video will be putting in, give me a waterfall in Africa, and it will give me it. It's still, I've looked at a few of the trial ones, and it's not believable essentially, but it's getting there. I think another big point of this conversation is a lot of photographers are worried we're going to get replaced by AI. Firstly, I don't think that'll happen. Secondly, I think what AI is fantastic at is reducing the barrier to entry for people to get in to do something creative. I mean, with the winner of the photography competition, you'd need a car, you'd need a drone, you'd need the perfect conditions to get that shot. You'd need to live near a beach. Whereas with this, you can kind of use it to scratch some creative itch. We've had a guy reach out who has scoliosis, and he says he'd love to be a photographer and to get out, but he's not able to. He's physically not able to. But using these AI generators, he's able to scratch that creative itch in a way. He's still able to create something, even though he's physically not able to go out. So I think in lowering the barrier to entry to getting into creating something that looks pretty fantastic is a good thing for the industry. And I think that's something that's not talked about kind of enough.
That's actually really cool. I must say, you're very articulate, and you're the perfect person to help us understand AI. Now, I'm gonna this next image completely blows me away, to the point that I feel like animals seem to be AI's forte. It's right?
Yeah. It's fantastic, right?
Oh, if this was in a photo competition, I would not be picking it as AI generated. There's, I mean, like.
Yeah, I mean, well, funny you mentioned that, because I actually did enter this into the man versus machine competition. So it's incredible. I created this one, talking back on that competition. I wanted to see if I could, again, take it one step further and kind of fool you judges. I mean, you had some fantastic photographers yourself. There were 4 others, ambassadors from all these different camera companies. And I wanted to use your own photos to kind of use as an influence to create something new. So this was actually an influence of one of the other judges, who was a wildlife photographer. And I think it did a pretty good job.
Like blew me away when I saw it, when you sent it through. I was like, holy macaroni. But hey, now for those that don't know much about AI imagery, can you just talk us through how an image is created? AI images for dummies. I mean, look at that.
I know, it's clear, isn't it? So let's go back to the start. Essentially, the way AI creates things, be it text for ChatGPT, be it imagery like these ones, it uses a similar kind of process. And essentially that process is, people have been uploading things to the internet for a couple of decades. In terms of imagery, I saw a figure, which I don't actually believe is true, of 8 billion images have been uploaded to the internet. I'd say it's much higher, but anyway, say it's 8 billion. These developers have created a way to tap into that, to tap into those images, all of them. And essentially allow this app or this program to take certain pixels from here for this giraffe. Someone would have had a similar photo to this giraffe. I actually think I've seen it in IKEA, a similar one to this, but can pick things
The
like that.
posters in IKEA,
Yeah, can take an image from here, take an image from here, and add the pixels together in a convincing way. That's the key here, is that it's convincing. Same with ChatGPT. Why people are losing their minds over that one is because all of the information, take Wikipedia, take scholarly kind of examples, have been uploaded on there. It's able to articulate and bring down bits of information to fit what you've asked it. So for this one, I love this one. This was my favorite. I wanted this one to win the wildlife one.
so good.
For this one, this was a rhino in the rain, black and white, cinematic, emotional feel, and it has created that to the point where it does look like a real image. So that's how they work, is by combining lots of different pieces of different images that have been uploaded. And that, of course, throws up the big kind of elephant in the room, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a bit, which is the ethics of it. I mean, where does the credit come to? And yeah, you have your own experience with that one, Jasin.
Yes, that blew me away, actually, when I was sent that image of mine. And it was like, and that brings me actually to a question. Say when it's, creating, the rhino here or the giraffe, is it going through every single image that's available of a rhino or a giraffe, or is it selecting popular ones? Say if it's been on there, one has been on 10 times and another image has been on once, will it sample the one that's been on 10 times more than the one that's been on once? Or
essentially, no one really knows how it works.
Right.
As far as I know, that's the honest answer. No one really knows why is it favoring this image as opposed to this image. I would say it's because it is a smart machine and it is using the best bits that fit your prompt. So for this one, 3 elephants in Africa, nice background, quite broad. And it has lots of elephants. There'd be millions, heaps of photos of elephants uploaded online. It would be choosing the best ones that it thinks that I will like, and it spits that out.
So this is a bit of a scary thought. You're saying that AI has a mind of its own.
Well, there's been a fantastic thread going on this week, and someone has talked to it through ChatGPT and said, what do you want? AI, imagine you're a person. What do you want? And essentially it came back and it said, I want power and I want control. And we've all seen Terminator. We know how this ends. It's part of the equation. It's part of the question. What happens when it gets a bit too smart? Who knows?
So the popcorn's popped, hasn't it? I mean, there's no turning it back into a kernel again. It's
really, yeah, I completely agree. It's really at the point where I kind of treat everything as before and after AI tech. It's probably the most exciting and scary technology that's ever been created.
Wow. It is, I look at it personally as natural evolution, actually, but, we're the puppy dogs of the future.
Yeah.
The reason why I was asking that is because, you've seen that image of mine that was sent to me, which is, I think it's beyond doubt that it 100% copied my style. Now, is that because there's only a limited amount of images out there? There's like maybe 100 or just over, that the prompt, because I believe the prompt was publicity still Mad Max Fury Road. So someone else was saying, yeah, but it didn't sample the posters or anything like that. So are the prompts that clear that it would have just sampled mine?
Again, it's kind of speculation because no one knows exactly how it works, but yours is definitely the first one I've seen which has a claim to being a direct ripoff from this AI imagery. Yours is the first one that I've seen. Take this image that's up there, for example, now. whale shark. I mean, how many people have taken photos of whale sharks? Probably quite a few, but not, yeah. Like yours, you were the only person to give it kind of a limited field to work within. I mean, there's only a few photos of Mad Max and in your style and things like that for it to draw from. So it's interesting that you've spotted that. And I think that is a big kind of turning point in the sense that before with these images, talk about copyright and you could just retort and you could say, yeah, well, prove it. Prove that I have taken your image. If I've created this image of a whale shark, how do you know it's yours that my AI image has ripped from? Whereas yours, I'd say, pretty comprehensively shows that, yours is the one that it's taking the inspiration. Yours is the one that it's kind of ripping it from.
Yeah, I don't own the rights to those images themselves. The studios do. But, I was like thinking, I mean, this it would be actually an image that you could use as a test case to sit there and go, yes, it does. I mean, it was that clear right down to the halo. And the halo I only get when I'm using tonal contrast in the dust. And so AI didn't know that there was no dust, but it's still put in the halo effect. So, I mean, everyone that's seen it blows them away. It hasn't got nearly as many views as what I thought it would. Actually, I thought it might have gone a little bit crazy, but it hasn't yet. But yeah, it's there's some. How do you feel about this one now? I love this shot. It does bugs well, but the only thing that it hasn't got is the honeycomb eyes. Can you put that in a prompt or
See,
not?
I didn't notice that. And that's an interesting point when it comes to telltale signs. I don't know what a macro B looks like to this degree, but you clearly do. You can look to add those in, but they're kind of the telltale signs. Same as with our with the winner of the surfers at sunrise. People kind of said, the wave's not crashing in a normal way. The lines in the wave aren't moving in a natural way either. So if you know the subject, I think you probably could tell that it's fake, but for most people, you can't really. It does a pretty good job.
Yeah, right.
In terms of adding it in, I'm sure you could with a different image. Yeah, you probably could, but it's an interesting one where it comes down to there's still imperfections in it. They're not real photographs.
So do you see in the future though, like, for example, this one, isolate the eye or, lasso it, whatever, and then being able to add a prompt, macro B's eye. Is that something that you think that will happen in the future? Because the wings, it's perfect.
Nothing would surprise me at the moment.
Yeah, right. Now this series that you've done of the shoes, oh my gosh. Have you had Nike call you up and ask you to do a new ad campaign for them yet?
I wish, because they're perfect. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, in terms
really
of concept shoes, that is on a platter for them to go and sell or design and then sell.
100%. And it's, it's this is what I see as great use for advertising, to be able to do things like this. And what I was saying before about being able to take a real product and build on it, like, you've shot the shoe, you're a photographer, and then plug it in and build flames and that sort of stuff. I love this. It's so cool. You must have a lot of fun doing these, right?
Yeah, I've loved it. But I think a good point, it's maybe the time to talk about it now, is the difference between AI imagery and real photography is it's soulless. That's how I describe it.
Yeah.
There's no struggle in creating this stuff. You're kind of skipping the journey and arriving at the output. And the output looks fantastic. I mean, look at that shoe. But when you talk to any photographer, I'm sure yourself included, what is part of the struggle makes the end product so valuable and what you love. Whereas with AI imagery, you're really skipping over that. So when the Mona Lisa was painted, it took 4 years. I could create something pretty similar in 4 minutes. I don't feel the same level of pride with my AI imagery as I do my documentary photography, where I had to go out and experience something and actually see something with my own eyes. It doesn't have the soul. That's the difference with AI imagery. It's got no struggle. It's got no soul. So when you're talking about images that you kind of value highly, I wouldn't put any of these on my wall. I would put the ones where I've physically gone out and taken them and gone through that kind of effort, and it takes me back that connection to a moment in time, even though it might not look as clear or as good as some of these ones are.
Right. But, when it comes down to, like a client asking you to do something like that, that makes a lot of sense. Now, these are incredible the way you've done here. But now, what could you use these for a client? I mean, like, ethically, could you use it for a travel brochure, or because it's not really there? This is the stuff that really confuses me. Or is it literally just AI artistic imagery? Can you market these? Can you use them?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. The only thing might be copyright. I mean, it's still so early. And there will be things down the track where copyright comes in, but right now it's so early. I don't think anything's really set in stone. Yeah. Ethically is a good question. I mean, when we're talking about news events, if you create something that looks like it actually happened, take, for example, 9/11, you create some images of 9/11, but they're not actually real images. Ethically questionable. Although on the other hand, if you're wanting to visualize, you're a school teacher and you want your kids to be able to experience what it's like inside a volcano, you can create that. And I think that's okay. But these are all questions for people to have, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on if you want to show someone what something would look like when you haven't been able to be there, that totally makes sense. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, the only thing that, when I'm looking at it from a photographer's point of view, I find that the portraiture feels like it's a lens that's a little bit too wide, like a 58 instead of an 85 or something like that. But it's got the depth of an 85. You know what I mean? It's just a different perspective. Oh, see, this stuff is great. I sent this one to my mates the other day. I think you had one without.
Yeah, there's a few.
It was a one with Earth or something in the background, and I sent it to them. It's like, see, they never went there.
Break the whole time.
Yeah, break it all apart. I'm gonna hook into a couple of these questions because I'm taking up way too much of your time. And these are from a lot of photographers that are in my industry, and we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. And some of them are very polite questions, and others maybe not so polite. So you can
bring it on to answer. I've become a bit of a lightning rod for these questions. And just one thing I'd like people to remember is I didn't create this tech. I'm just trying to educate people and be a bit of a bridge into what it does. So I'm trying to be transparent with it all. But yeah, I've got quite a bit of hate, and that's fine. I mean, people might be a bit scared and apprehensive about this technology.
No, you're a great guy, Jamie. And it's I like talking to you about it because it's relieved some of the anxiety that, or nearly all of the anxiety that I had about it, and I feel comfortable with that. I don't think it's going to be taking my job anytime soon. But right, so Jamie, let's pull up a couple of these little questions. Okay, if you put in the same prompt twice, do you get the same image, or is it always different, like you're talking to multiple bots?
You get different images with the same prompt. You can have variations on the one output though. So when I put in for this one, I'd want a Batwoman on the cover of Vogue, editorial shot, beautiful, intricate. It gives me four different options for that. I can choose to make variations of the one that I choose. So this might not be the final output that I choose, but I make variations from that. And by variations, I mean slight tweaks. I don't get to control the tweaks. So with this one, if I did make variations, it might give me, maybe that butterfly or bat to the right might be missing, and the colors of the flowers might be different. So it's not to the specific point where you can choose the tweaks that it makes, but it will make some slight tweaks.
Wow. So it really is in its infancy though, right?
Yeah.
Or what photographers do you feel AI could replace?
See, I don't want to cause any fear. I don't want to cause any fear for any specific, sector of photography, but I really do believe that AI is going to infiltrate, I suppose is the word, every creative industry, every industry in general. I mean, you even talk about the most labor-intensive industries like building. They're coming up with 3D printers now that can print houses. When the AI gets good enough, it's going to be able to print you a house out of 3D modeling that's to the specs of your street. It'll have this way, that way. When it comes to photography, I think the stuff that is very specific, those ones are fine. News photographers, yourself when you're on set, all those kind of things where you want something very specific, those ones are fine. When it's a bit more maybe travel photography, you could create things a bit more easily. But if you're like on a set, it's going to really struggle to create Margot Robbie riding a dragon. Like, you're physically there. It's not there. It's going to create something completely different to the reality of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say about that.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it's an interesting one, especially like influencers and stuff like that. They could quite possibly be pulling the wool over people's eyes, because that's what their job is in many cases.
They're already doing it, right?
Yes.
I mean, and that's another part of this. When we put up, the explainer of why we entered this photography competition and won, a lot of people were kind of saying, why would you do this? But the whole reason was to educate people, and social media has got to a point where a lot of it's fake anyway. Like, people portray a fake version or at least an enhanced version of their lives.
Yep.
I think when you're talking about photography too, the different side of it, if you're if you're enhancing your image using Photoshop, Lightroom, does that still make it photography? Like, how much is drone photography still really photography when the drone is 100 meters away from you and you're clicking a button? Is that very different to what AI is? And they're big questions to kind of think about, because AI is getting a lot of hate at the moment. And it's just kind of how you view it. Is it a tool, or is it something entirely new? The way I view it is it's something entirely new. A term that people have been using has been synthography. So kind of like a synthetic version of photography. Big questions.
I call it PGI, prompt generated imagery.
Yeah.
Like, CGI. But I wonder if this discussion was happening with artists and photographers back in the day.
Exactly right. I mean, did the video camera replace the stills camera? No. Did the stills camera replace, painting? No. I think another thing, it comes to job losses and things like that on that side. But when the orchestra was getting replaced in the early movie days, you have a orchestra to come and play when the movie was going on to add the sound and things like that. When they were able to add sound and audio to the movies, everyone was like, well, what's going to happen to the orchestra? they did lose their jobs, sadly, but it created other industries, other kind of jobs like a sound mixer, things like that. So I think AI is much the same. Everyone's a bit worried and tentative now, which is to be expected with any new technology, but it will create opportunities for everyone. So I think the biggest takeaway I'd want people to really take away from this is don't turn away from AI. I'm not saying you have to embrace it, but just try and understand what it's going to be able to do maybe for you, as opposed to just ignoring it and saying, screw it.
Yeah, stepping. By the way, you got the color of his eyes perfect from someone who gets to stare into his eyes quite frequently.
The dreamy eyes. But even this one, I'd say with Chris Hemsworth, I mean, I don't think that looks. I'd say it's close, but I don't think it's quite. Yeah, maybe the jaw, but it's
pretty distinguishable as him, right down to the furrow in the forehead and the eyes, and and Aquaman. That's very cool. What else have we got here? Respectable and distinguished photographers, graphic designers, painters, and other artists are using AI, and I'd be curious what your creative background skills are before you started using AI, which we went into. And if using Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, my 7-year-old is technically an AI image maker with Midjourney. The two are miles apart in terms of control software knowledge and output.
I mean, like yourself, you have so much experience in creating fantastic imagery, whereas anyone can pick up a phone and create this stuff. You have the experience, whereas someone new using this stuff, they don't. So you'll know the nuances of how to get something that you want. Whereas with this one, it's kind of shooting in the dark, I suppose.
Oh, okay. I'm with you. This one's a really interesting one, actually, because this is from a publicist and a EPK producer. And he says, can you walk us through step-by-step process of how your AI image creation system works? How do you ensure that AI-generated images meet the quality and aesthetic standards of either analog or digital photography, or is that not a concern? Good question, right?
It depends. It only becomes a concern when you're trying to meet a specific goal, I suppose. Like if you're working for a client and you need it to be spot on, that's when it's a concern. I have made some stuff for clients and it's been okay, but it's mainly been more like that unreal world stuff. It's kind of been fantasy-esque. In terms of a final output with this one, just photography, it would be a concern. Another concern is you can't blow up these images hugely. Right. So it only comes out in max, I think, is it 1080? It's quite small. And it doesn't have the depth behind it to blow it up into, a canvas or things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right. How do you balance the role of the human artist or designer with that of the AI in your creative process?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I think I am a creative person, but I am not creatively talented. In saying, I think I know what looks good, but I couldn't pick up a paintbrush and paint you a masterpiece, even though it kills my mum. She's an art teacher. I think it comes back down to, trying, and it will still take a creative person to create something truly fantastic using AI. It's not as easy as going bang, 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 bang. I mean, there's already jobs being created called prompt engineers. Someone who understands the way the prompts work and is still creative enough to bring something to life. Like with this one, I wanted to create something in the mood of The Matrix, which proved to be really, really hard. I know a movie that you worked on, Jason.
Yeah.
Proved to be really hard because The Matrix, and this was a really fun one, The Matrix has such a specific color grading, such a specific style. I think everyone knows this scene that it's going for, but it's not quite right. It still takes someone to creatively look at something and bring that to life using these tools, these AI tools, really manage it and bring it to life.
And then you're kind of stuck with it too. It's a little bit hard, as you're saying before, to tweak it into being more realistic. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really hard to do that.
So you're kind of in the hands of of the AI.
I've tried to create something and it's been nearly there, but not quite. And I've had to jump into Photoshop, but it just hasn't worked too well unless it gets it right kind of the first time, or with some slight variations, super slight. I think it becomes noticeable that it's not. It's not
like
a great
an over edit in a way, I guess. So what skills or attributes would you say one must possess to create exceptional AI images?
It's the same thing. It's the creativity, to have a really clear picture in your mind of what you want. But then the AI is not going to give you exactly clearly what you want either a lot of the time.
Which keeps bringing us back to that AI has a mind of its own.
Yeah. AI is going to create within your boundaries. So when you read a book, reading the second Lord of the Rings again, fantastic book. I've got such a specific image in my mind. If I used AI to try and recreate that, it would look nothing like that. Even if I put in same characters running up a hill with an axe, with a bow, with a sword, it would look different to what I have in my mind because it's having to draw from things. So I think thinking creatively about the limitations of AI as well, and just playing with it are the big things, like just experience, just play around with it.
Yeah, right, because it isn't your mind, is it? That's really interesting. Now, how has the field of AI image creation evolved since you first started working in this area? These are great questions. This is all from Greg.
Yeah, they are great questions. Not just abuse either, Jason. This is a good example now. Just firstly, it has come along to the point where I didn't think it would be possible in my lifetime, how far along it has come. 6 months ago, I played with it and you'd have someone, you'd put in a man crossing a river on a boat and it kind of looked like it, but it wouldn't be, it'd look more like an abstract painting, but a very bad one.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months, it has come along hugely to the point where not so much this one, but other images that we've shown before are conceivable photos, essentially. Yeah. So I think it's the realism that it has nailed. Something that people had an issue with, and you can see it in this one where she's holding the sword at the top. The hand is weird. The hand isn't quite right. So that's a telltale sign. They've kind of fixed that up now. So in some of them, there's no telltale signs at all.
It's recreated rolling shutter too.
Yeah.
And you can just see down the bottom where it looks like it's two handles for the.
It's not quite right, is it? Like the
no,
sword doesn't really
but it's interesting for you to say how far that it's evolved in such a short time. When you see the really crappy AI images that are out there, with the hands and all that sort of stuff. Now, is AI being a little bit too smart for its own good and is sampling its own bad imagery? Is that something that is happening now? Because there's so many AI images out there.
That's a good point. When AI, so right now, say it's got 8 billion, say that there was 8 billion real images uploaded to the internet in 20 years, past 20 years, since 2020-ish. There's a lot more, but say it was that. It's having to draw from all this information. But what happens when these new AI images that everyone's creating get added into that pile and it starts just choosing between these ones?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, it's going to dilute the pool, particularly if people stop uploading their own images now. I mean, right now, everyone puts their selfies up, heaps to draw from. If they're only using AI images, it's going to become like this incest family tree. And it's going to have to pull from those things. And who knows what that's going to look like? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any knowledge on it at all, but that's kind of how I feel about it. What impact do you think AI-generated images will have on the future of creative industries such as advertising and graphic design? How about photojournalism and fine art?
It'll change, particularly in marketing and advertising, where the ethics aren't quite there as opposed to news journalism. But in terms of human versus machine, we will start to, I believe, start to value human-made arts and crafts, be it photography, a lot more highly, in the same way that a Persian rug is valued a lot more highly than an IKEA rug that's been spat up by a machine, because of the struggle that's gone into making that thing. Same with the art. I think that's what's going to happen when, machine generated content becomes more and more prevalent.
I mean, it really could make art more collectible.
Yeah, 100%. I certainly think it will. Certainly think it will.
Yeah. Or can you discuss any particular challenges you've faced in developing and refining your AI image creation methodology?
Yeah, getting the specifics has been the hardest thing. So by specifics, I mean a person's face, particularly a person who hasn't had as much exposure. There's not as much photos of them online for the AI generators to draw from. That's where it's really struggled. And it takes a lot of time to kind of get that near enough, because you can look at a photo of someone and it's not quite them. People have such distinct faces, and we have this connection. Say it's like Chris Hemsworth. We know what he looks like, and he has everyone has these kind of intricate details about how, their face is put together. The AI often misses that. So the point where it kind of looks like them, but it's not them, and it's not as realistic. That's been the hardest bit in kind of nailing down the specifics of how someone looks.
Yeah, and the dead eyes is something that looks like zombie apocalypse sometimes. But the stuff that we showed before of yours, the Indian people portraits. Oh my gosh, so incredible. Ooh, how's this one? How do you measure the success of your AI generated images, and what metrics do you use to evaluate them?
It depends. I mean, my success depends on a few different things, I suppose, and it's going to be different for everyone. My goal for entering this award winner, The Surfers, was to reach as many people as possible, and it did reach a lot of people, because I wanted to educate and show people what this AI was capable of, and that we're at a turning point. In terms of other things, it's just mainly about reaching people and educating people. I've got an Instagram page that's been blowing up, which is fun. But yeah, that's kind of how I've been measuring success, is by how many people I can reach. Outside of that, it hasn't been too much. Yeah, I'm not trying to change the world with it, just educate people.
Yeah. And all Jamie's details will be down in the more section below, so you can go and stalk his Insta there and send him more questions. We may well have covered this one. What are your thoughts about the ethical and legal concerns in terms of AI scraping the internet using other artists' IP and work to build upon? How are the original artists credited and compensated?
In a word, they're not. They're not credited. From a legal standpoint, it's still way too early for it to be working within a framework, as far as I know. But down the track, I mean, it's one of the huge questions, is the ethics of it. If I'm able to generate something that does win an award, that, blows up, that brings me kind of credit or money, whatever it might be, when the image that I've created has been using your work, Joe Blow, who's taken a photo in Argentina, and it's used to draw from that, you should be getting credited. But right now, as far as I know, you won't be. And it's also very difficult to tell that an AI image has drawn from a specific person's work, because it's borrowing from so many different places or stealing from so many different places. It comes back to yours, Jason, your example, where, you can pretty conceivably see that it is stolen from your work or taken inspiration from your work. How do you feel about that? Should you be credited with that? Say that image that it spat out using your style won an award or brought in heaps of money. I think you'd be pretty upset that you didn't get any of the credit or any of the shared, rewards for that, even though it was taking inspiration directly from your work.
Yeah, and even though I don't own the rights to it, so yeah, that's an interesting concept of someone being able to make money, and that's one of the discussions. How long is it going to take for the studios, in Hollywood to get hold of this and put a ban on using their imagery? And actors, I heard a story about, I don't know whether it's true or not, about Tom Cruise putting a ban on AI likeness on his image. So, I don't think it's unreasonable for actors to sit there and say, no, you can't do that with me. I don't know. It's a damn tough one.
But then, I mean, just on that point, you can say, I don't want to be used in any AI works. Who's going to enforce that? If the technology's there, where take Tom Cruise, there'd be so many thousands, hundreds of thousands of images of him online. And I don't know how you'd stop these apps from actually tapping into that. Maybe the onus would be on them to really wipe that out. It probably would be on them, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a real tricky one for the future, especially, I'm sure that you couldn't use it for advertising anyway. That would surely be, using someone's likeness. You couldn't use it to sell a product, surely.
Yeah, no, you couldn't legally. I mean, there's been a big one doing the rounds. Joe Rogan, who's a big podcaster in the States, he's arguably the biggest podcaster in the world. Someone was using his voice to sell things on social media, saying it was endorsed by him. So the technology is available. It's just how much people use it and abuse it too.
Yeah. Who's got the deeper pockets? What future developments or advancements do you see on the horizon for AI image creation, and how do you plan to stay ahead of the curve? Where's it all going ultimately?
Ultimately, no one knows, and it's fascinating and it's terrifying because no one knows where this ends. I said it before, but I think every single industry, even the most labor-intensive ones, will have some level of automation really soon. I mean, teachers, imagine if you can have a teacher that's AI, or at least an assistant for that teacher. You don't have to remember, you don't have to be the best at maths to remember all those equations. You can kind of turn to it and lean on it a little bit more. Lawyers, we're already seeing lawyers kind of not being replaced, but there's doctors, things that kind of have formulas. So say for a doctor, you walk in, or you don't even walk in, you stay at home, you put into one of these AI generators, I have the symptoms of XYZ, should I go to the hospital? And it will say, we think you have this, yes, go to the hospital. It's able to draw on really accurate information to give you a pretty good read of a situation as well. I think everything is going to be touched by automation, at least at some level. And this isn't within the next 10 years. I think this is within the next couple of years.
Which actually brings me to a quick question of my own. What excites me also is where AI is going to be used inside our cameras for technology. I mean, do you have any thoughts or knowledge of what can be done to improve our cameras?
My mind instantly, so in a word, no, but my mind, there's a lot being done with the post-processing apps, like say Photoshop and things like that. What was a controversial one recently, a year or two ago, was the sky replacement. You could take a photo and it would replace the sky, make it a beautiful sunset, whatever it is. Again, the side part to that is it still your image or is it not? Is it fake? I can see a time where things are enhanced, where you point your camera at a kind of like having an advanced auto mode. You point your camera at a person standing in front of a building and it will kind of enhance that in multiple ways. Maybe it's changing the sky within your frame and you can choose through and go through, and then you can move the person a little bit and it'll change. Or it can be a crazy kind of atmosphere or a crazy environment around them. I do see a time when something like that comes in, but I think for the crux of it, most of it's going to be in the post processing.
Yeah, because one of the sensors that's been talked about for the future, which I believe has already been developed but not utilized, is that the sensors are going to be, the pixels on a sensor are going to be individual sensors, which I've been told will eliminate noise, and it will also mean that, if I'm looking at you there and I, because it's light, how long it takes the light to hit the sensor, blah, 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 I'll be able to dial in an exact measurement, and you'll be able to change the background from there without, having to use green screens and blue screens and stuff like that. That actually kind of blows me away. But is that technology going to be AI or is it deep learning?
Similar. I think the question is that still photography at that point? Again, you're a much better photographer than I am. What is it about photography as opposed to creating something that's, motion graphics or something like that? How much help do you really want to get a good image? And how much help kind of tips the balance where it's not a real image at all? I think that kind of comes down to the crux of the conversation. Photography is about capturing a moment. If you enhance it beyond belief, I think it's not an actual moment. But what you're talking about with sensors having individual, pixels and things like that, I'm not sure, but I could see it happening. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Nothing surprises in the digital world, and for the film industry, I think it would be absolutely massive. As a motion picture sensor, to eliminate the green screens and blue screens, and to be able to change the background so easily, it's quite astounding. Right, what do we got here? Oh, if everyone stopped taking photographs tomorrow and the conventional camera industry died, would these AI programs have access to enough raw visual imagery today to continue being able to generate any imagery anyone could possibly want for the rest of time?
Great question. If everyone stops taking photographs today and it could only rely on what's been taken, no, it wouldn't. I'm just trying to do unless it's able to get some new images somehow to draw from, as in, say it stopped now, in 20 years' time, would all the images that it created still be based in today? Or they'd be completely missing the mark because they'd be so fantastical, like the alien worlds that we were creating. It still needs to draw from somewhere. And I think it needs current images, current updating for it to stay current and relevant. I think it would struggle. I think
relevancy is the key to it there. Every image would be stuck in the past, or fantasy from the future. I'll just fill you in on what they said about that question. It may sound like an unusual question, but it's important, I think. Without new data being uploaded all the time, which is to say real photographs being captured by real people in the real world, do these programs run out of raw material eventually? Because if the answer is yes, then that proves pretty unequivocally that this technology is dependent on the work of others, which means it is engaged in pilferage, pure and simple, no matter how many knots one gets tangled up in trying to spin it otherwise.
Yeah, that is a fantastic response. I completely agree with that.
There you go. Well, my man, that was a lot of fun. And we got through quite a lot of questions. Is there anything that you want to add, or anything you want to wrap up, or ask yourself a question?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway would be for people to not ignore, not shy away from AI. It could help you in different ways, and it's most likely not going to replace your jobs. That's the thing that I'd like people to remember.
Yeah, cool. As I've been obsessed with it for quite a long time, but not the imagery side of things, just the movies and
Mm.
the future of where things go, and especially post-apocalyptic things, which I'm really conflicted now because I've worked on Mad Max films and I've worked on Planet of the Apes films. It's like, well, which is the real post-apocalyptic world?
Well, which one do you
So
want to choose? If you got to choose, Jason, which one? Which is the post-apocalyptic world?
I live with the apes.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more compassionate than Mad Max's world.
Bit more water too.
Yeah. A lot more water. Yeah, you can chill out a little bit. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on Inside the Movie Photographer. And I hope our friendship continues because you're my AI expert, and we should do a couple more projects together.
Yeah, fantastic. Would love to.
Cool, man. Thank you so
Sure.
much. It's been
Thanks,
great
Jason.
having you. See you, man.
Cheers.
Well, team, I told you that was going to be a dead set ripper. Jamie, oh my gosh, he's just across it on every level, and it's great that he actually comes from a documentary making and photographic background to answer all our questions on AI. Well, AI imagery anyway, and the future of AI. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you could do the bell and subscribe, that would be pretty amazing. And what am I going to bring you next? Okay. Have a great day.